Even though Florida is one of the hottest states in the entire country, they do not require landlords to provide air conditioning for their tenants, and that's a good thing. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today. It's coming out of the state of Florida and it has to do with air conditioning. Now, I've been talking about air conditioning a lot because you know what? It's hot this summer. It's very hot. And a lot of states and local municipalities are talking about trying to force landlords to provide air conditioning for their tenants. And I think it's a bad idea. First of all, it's not needed, okay? It's not needed because 99% of landlords already provide air conditioning for their tenants. And when our air conditioning breaks, we do everything that we can to get the air conditioning fixed as quickly as possible because we empathize with the situation of a tenant who has a broken air conditioner, has family, and is sitting in a sweat box, okay? It's not like we want to sit there and experience that ourselves. But the few landlords who do not provide air conditioning, there's a reason they don't provide air conditioning. And what I've mentioned before in the past is sometimes a tenant might be able to obtain rent that is lower than usual if they provide their own air conditioning unit. So if I rent my property out to a tenant without an air conditioner in it, then that tenant might get a little bit cheaper rent. It's pretty simple. So a lot of tenants, they have window units that they own and they're willing to rent from a landlord who doesn't provide air conditioning. So I don't believe that a landlord should be on the hook for making sure that every single unit that they own has an air conditioning unit in it. And I don't think that a landlord should be mandated by the government to do anything like provide this sort of thing, okay? It's dumb. It's absolutely dumb. And when government mandates are passed, what we see, the result is always going to be more expensive housing. And you know what? It seems to me that a lot of people, they don't think about this sort of thing. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you think the government should be mandating that landlords provide air conditioning? Okay, do you think that this is absolutely necessary? I don't. Like I said before, 99% of landlords already provide. It's good business, it's good for business. When you are competing with other landlords, you really think that tenants are going to want to rent your property without air conditioning? Most likely not. But here's the thing, right? If you are one of those few landlords who does not provide air conditioning, then more power to you, okay? And I don't believe that landlords are purposefully not fixing air conditioning. I mean, I think that there are landlords who may be financially or unable to afford it, but that's another issue, okay? Whether you pass this law or not, you're still gonna have this exact same problem. That doesn't fix the problem of the landlord's too broke to get the air conditioning fixed. That's more of an issue with personal finance and how that person operates their business than anything else. So anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. This article is coming from TampaBay.com and it says, despite extreme heat, Florida does not require landlords to provide AC. Sunshine State landlords are required to provide heat in the winter, but there is no law requiring air conditioning. Yeah, it's funny that landlords are required to provide heat, even though it's like the warmest state in the entire country, but not required to, provide AC. So, the heat thing, it does get cold in Florida. I've been in Florida. I spent months there for work before, and in northern Florida, up near Jacksonville, and yeah, it did get pretty cold in the wintertime. So anyway, let's see what the article says. Passion Facey's 8-year-old son sweats so much in his sleep that his bed is wet by morning. To stay cool, her 3-year-old has learned to shed his clothes when the family gets to their apartment. Her infant cries and cries and cries as Facey presses damp towels to the baby's cheek. And Facey, 29, is covered in bumps from the heat. For most Floridians, home is a reprieve from temperatures that climb higher every summer. But for people living without air conditioning, home life becomes punishing as the heat saps sleep, concentration, energy, and health. The effects can be fatal. Hundreds of people have died because of heat exposure while indoors in the U.S. since 2019. The majority were without air conditioning. Experts say outdated housing laws and high electric bills could be to blame. And I don't really think that's the issue at all, okay? I don't think that it's high electric bills. I think that a lot of the situation, it isn't housing laws either. Simply put, like, and it's funny that they mention both of those things at the same time, because let's say the landlord does provide air conditioning. Well, that doesn't change how much the electricity costs to run that air conditioning, and the people might still be keeping the air conditioning off because they can't afford the electric bill. So that's not the landlord's fault. That's not the landlord's fault at all. So that's a different situation. I really don't think they should be bringing that part up at all if they're trying to talk about mandates upon landlords. But anyway, what is the solution to this problem? Like, you think about it, humans lived for almost our entire existence without AC. AC is only like 100 years old, I mean, mass AC, that was pretty much in everyone's house. And even in many countries throughout the world, there still is no air conditioning. So what we should be doing is figuring out, what can we do for those people who can't afford the electricity, or who don't have air conditioning, and I would say move to a cooler climate, but people don't want to move. But I think that like, this will never be a problem that can be 100% solved. Okay, we're always going to have those people who refuse to turn the AC on, and when you hear about people who die because of heat indoors, it's usually very old people, elderly people, or it's very, very young people, like, children who just don't know any better. And it's very rarely situations where that isn't the case, okay? It's not like there's a lot of people who are just, oh, the landlord didn't provide air conditioning, and then, hundreds of people were dying. Nope. No, it just doesn't work that way. More people die from heat-related deaths due to hiking outdoors probably than this situation here. It's kind of a fake situation, in my opinion. Facey's oldest son splashed himself with water from the sink as she sat in her 13th Street Heights apartment. She ran her hand across her collarbone, pulling drops of sweat into puddles on her fingertips. "Look at my skin. I'm literally breaking out in hives," she said. "In the last 6 months, Facey's air conditioning has quit 8 times, and because she rents, there's no apparent end to her misery." So her air conditioner is broke 8 times. Now, keep in mind, in order for your air conditioning to break more than once, that means the landlord had to have fixed it. So, first of all, the landlord provided air conditioning. Second of all, the landlord apparently has repaired the air conditioning at least 7 times, okay? So, does this sound like the sort of situation where the landlord is doing something wrong? I'm not saying that, it's cool that her unit keeps breaking, but, when we're dealing with low-income tenants, a lot of the times, in order to balance our budgets, because we're making such thin profit margins, we will fix things rather than replace them. In her situation, rather than replacing this air conditioning unit, the landlord continues to have it repaired because it has to be cheaper to get it repaired than actually replacing it. That's the only reason you would repair something 7 times. Or maybe it's something simple, but whatever the situation is, right, it sounds to me like the landlord is at least on top of it, getting the air conditioning fixed. When it breaks, does it suck? Yes. But if the landlord wasn't fixing it, then there would be a problem. Barriers to cool air. Across the U.S., few laws guarantee renters cool air. Many housing laws were adapted from those drafted decades ago in the Northeast, when few dangerously hot days meant no pressing need to codify a right to air conditioning. But the world is warming. In Florida, where temperatures tend to dip below freezing just a handful of days each year, most landlords are required to provide access to heat for tenants. But there is no legal obligation for a landlord to provide a means for air conditioning. So yeah, what they're implying there is they want laws that say landlords must provide air conditioning. Not necessary. It's just not necessary. Like I said, most landlords are already doing this. Very, very, very few. Even here in Omaha, Nebraska, very few landlords don't provide AC. And we are much, much cooler than Florida or Arizona or Texas, okay? So I think that the reality of the situation is that some people will never be happy. They wouldn't be happy unless, the government was in control of everything. And I hate that. They don't need a law to say, landlords need to do this. They don't need a law that says that when already they're doing it. It's ridiculous, okay? So anyway, I'm going to put a link to this article in the description down below. Let me know, do you think that Florida should mandate landlords to provide air conditioning for their tenants?